Half of the year, beating Penn State, beating Iowa, beating arch rival Michigan. Oregon's also stepped up. They beat USC, they beat Arizona, they beat Oregon State, all which decided the Pac-10 title. I really see Ohio State stepping up, winning this game because of their defense. Oregon's going to move the ball a little bit, but I think Ohio State might bend. I don't think they'll break, and I think they'll put up just enough points to beat Oregon.
I also, in my conversations with Buckeyes, I sorted through the gibberish and pulled out some fragments of the English language. And when I did, it sounded as if there's some frustration there with Jim Tressel, and he's really handcuffed Terrell Pryor. But I would not be surprised to see Ohio State busting out an offense a la Michigan in the Capital One Bowl, the 2007-2008 season, really opening it up. And if they do that, I actually think Ohio State's offense could be even more potent than Oregon's. That's why I went with Ohio State. Let's move on to the Sugar Bowl now. That'd be the primetime game on January 1st. You have Florida and Cincinnati. Scott, you and I got to see Cincinnati in person. I guess we're not impressed as we both picked Florida to win this game. I'm very confident in that pick. But David, you like Tony Pike and the Bearcats, who may not have a coach with Brian Kelly, and that's a legitimate Notre Dame coaching rumor.
And I do think that it might be a little bit of a homer pick, as I do have a friend on the Cincinnati roster. But I do feel like Tim Tebow and the Florida offense were exposed in the SEC championship game. You can see if you make Florida pass, you can beat them. And I don't know if they need a coach to tell them that. A simple scheme to make Florida pass and keep Tim Tebow in the pocket could be enough to win this game. That Cincinnati offense is easily going to put up 30 points. They just got to hold Florida under that.
Marty Gilliard is a pretty impressive player, as you see, from those highlights right there, almost returning a kickoff for a touchdown 3 times, but it was against Pitt. And I don't know if we're convinced, and I'm saying we as in Scott and myself, are convinced that the level of talent in the Big East compares to Florida's talent, especially on defense.
There's no way that Cincinnati has the speed and talent to keep up with Florida. All 5-star recruits, it seems. Speed in every position, talent in every position. If you want to talk about being exposed, how about Cincinnati's defense getting exposed last Saturday, giving up 44 points to Pitt, who has not been an offensive juggernaut this year. Even Brian Kelly, he may or may not be there. It doesn't matter. Florida's a very good team despite their loss to Alabama. I give Cincinnati very, very little chances.
All right, well, you two can settle it with fisticuffs later, I suppose. Let's move on to the Fiesta Bowl now. Of course, a rich history of interesting games in the Fiesta Bowl. Of course, 2003 National Championship game between Miami, Ohio State. The Boise State-Oklahoma game of a couple years ago, which included a wedding proposal, which was reality TV I was not interested in. But Boise State and TCU gloriously get screwed into playing each other here in this game. We'll never know if those two teams can stack up against BCS opponents well. Of course, Boise State did beat Oregon at the beginning of the year, but it was the first game of the season. In Glendale, Arizona, David, you went with Boise, Scott and I both went with TCU.
A trend developing here, it seems.
Exactly. We'll encounter this problem again with the Orange Bowl, but why the Boise State Broncos?
Boise State Broncos, simply winners. They've gone undefeated so far, counting this season, 3 of the last 4 seasons. They've got a great coach in Chris Peterson. They have a good team, a very solid team. They have a sophomore quarterback in Kellen Moore, who would be a Heisman candidate assuming he was in a power conference. So I think you just see a trend of genuine winners in Boise, Idaho.
No losers in Boise, except during potato famines. Scott, TCU, very impressive this season as well. Destroyed BYU at home. I think that's the game that we're both remembering and going with the Horned Frogs, which are very, very scary, by the way, if you actually look at one. This will be a good game, I think we both agree, but you give the edge to TCU.
Here's the stat. If you have one stat you want to look at, TCU has won by 28.3 points per game this year. Steamrolled opponents. Boise State, not so much. They've had 3 games where they won by under 12 points, given they still won them, but not against very good teams. All 3 WAC teams, Louisiana Tech, Nevada. There's another one there I can't quite remember. Boise State, give them credit for winning, but they haven't been convincing. TCU has been convincing at every turn of the corner. Fantastic defense, a good coach, Gary Patterson. I see TCU winning this game. I think they could beat a lot of the teams in the BCS Bowls. Boise's no exception.
And, if you look at the strength of schedule, too, I think you'd have to give the edge to a TCU team that has to play Utah, has to play BYU.
And they beat Utah soundly, too.
Yeah, that's true. Go ahead, David. You look like you're ready to just explode at us.
No, absolutely fine.
All right, well, here's your chance to explode. At least my head exploded when I saw you were picking this one, David. Iowa over Georgia Tech in the Orange Bowl. I actually researched this back, and Iowa was in the Orange Bowl in 2003. I actually remember them winning that game. That's not true. They got just destroyed by USC. Why Iowa in this game? Quickly, David.
I think it's a close game, honestly. This is probably my least confident of the BCS picks, even more so than the Cincinnati game. I just think that Iowa, they have Ricky Stanzi coming back. They have a solid defense, solid all-around team. I don't particularly like the ACC, and I don't particularly like Georgia Tech.
It is certainly an unorthodox offense, the veer that they run there, the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech. And let's move on to the national championship game, guys. I pulled a switcheroo on you at the last minute and changed my pick to Texas from Alabama. Go ahead, David, now that you and Scott can beat up on me. Why do you go with Alabama besides, even with the obvious reasons? Why Alabama?
If Texas can't put up points against Nebraska, how are they supposed to put up points on the best defense in the nation? I don't know. I don't see how Mark Ingram doesn't run wild on this team. I just think Alabama has far too many weapons. I think they're far too good of a football team. I don't see much standing in the way of an Alabama national championship.
Well, Nebraska's not really a bad defense either. Give them a lot of credit for that. 9 sacks, I believe, in that game. Alabama's a better team, though. If you look at their whole body of work, consistently week in and week out, proving themselves, beat Florida, beat Virginia Tech. They had some narrow wins over Auburn, over Tennessee. They beat, I believe it was at least 4 or 5 ranked teams, including LSU. Texas, meanwhile, struggled against Oklahoma, struggled against Nebraska, had a couple resounding wins, but you never quite know what you're going to get from them. They have not been an overpowering team like Alabama has this year. And come on, if you're going to beat Florida that big, when Florida was at the beginning of the year rumored to be one of the best teams in decades in college football, you got to give the edge to Alabama. A very, very good team, I think.
All things that were said about Miami when they played Ohio State in 2003, and I get the distinct feeling that just the momentum, there's so much pressure on Alabama not only to win, but to win big, that this team may just completely implode. You heard Nick Saban, when he accepted the bid in the national championship game, the first question that was asked of him